Holger, yesterday we started delving into some of the Norse mythology, combining it with Greek mythology, combining it with some of the Christian aspects. We started combining it with general philosophies. I also want to dig today how even maths ties into this inner world or these different dimensions. Geometry, I would like to get into geometry, and not the school type geometry and not the school type maths. I want to get into, as I said, the fun part, not the boring part of maths and science and geography. Let's look at some different ways of approaching these subjects. Okay. These are the 5 Platonic solids. Can you see them there on your screen clearly?
Yes.
Okay. This is what we call a tetrahedron. If you have a look, it's actually got 3 sides on the top, like a pyramid, but a pyramid with 3 sides and 1 base. So that gives you 4 sides. You've got the cube, which has got your 6 sides. You've got your basically what we call the pyramid that you see in Giza, with the 4 sides on the top, 1 base, but then you have it where it's mirrored underneath, so then your bases disappear and you actually have 8 sides. So it's almost like a reflection, a pyramid of Giza with a reflection. So that's an 8-sided figure. Then you'll move into your 12-sided figure. That's what they call the dodecahedron, and then you move into your icon. No, that's the wrong way around. You've got your dodecahedron is 12-sided, your icosahedron is 20 sides, and these are what they call the 5 Platonic bodies. But let's not get into the heavy maths and heavy science of it. Let's enjoy what the simple things are, how they can show us simply raising our consciousness, enlightenment in different ways. So I want to actually delve a bit into that and talk on how to actually use this so-called heavy science and make it very simple. If we go into the first one, I'm going to move across into another screen, and we've got this thing called the Merkaba. Can you see that you've got the 2 pyramids that that's a tetrahedron on its own, where it's got the 3 sides on the top and the base. Then when you interlace them, when you put one facing up, one facing down, so you've got 2 of them into each other, you'll end up with what they call a star tetrahedron, and this is what they call the Merkaba. Now, in the Jewish faith, the Merkaba is the vehicle. They believe a lot. That's also now I want to bring in the Jewish faith, how they bring in the Merkaba. As I explained in the last video, Merkaba basically means spirit, light, body. So your one tetrahedron, 3-sided pyramid with a base, so we're going to call that a 4-sided pyramid, not the top. The pyramid of Giza, that's a 5-sided pyramid. You've got the 4 sides on top with a base. So that's a 5-sided body or 5-sided image. These are a 3-sided pyramid with a base to give you 4 sides. So if you combine one facing up, one facing down, and you combine them, you end up with what they call a star tetrahedron or Merkaba. Now this is what Ernst was talking about, what you could actually travel into these different universes. So while we think we need a physical UFO to travel places, you can do this, your body will stay behind, but through this instrument, through this Merkaba, you can actually travel off into different dimensions and different places. These balls, if you can see where I kept calling it my mouse, it's my cursor. If you can see this cursor now showing the circle around the Merkaba, that's when the 2 tetrahedrons are turning in opposite directions. When they spin at a certain speed, they will actually start generating light. And these are sometimes the balls of light that you see in the sky. These are actually people who have actually activated their own Merkaba, and they are traveling. And you'll sometimes see them individually, sometimes in sets of 3 or more. This is one of the explanations of what you'll possibly see. This is the 2 Merkabas spinning in opposite directions to each other. There's the Merkabas, the 2 Merkabas or star tetrahedrons in each other. They create this light force around it. And that is also what you sometimes will see as a UFO with a person. And we always assume they're alien. Sometimes you'll actually have a physical person in there. Although you can travel sometimes, depending how advanced you are, you can travel where only your your mind and your spirit will travel, and sometimes you will see the person inside, depending to what level they elevated. Let's see, there's another picture of it there. This image here is explained. You want to study up on this spirit light body, you can study up Drunvalo Melchizedek, and this is part of his work that he's put together here. So you can actually study it and go and do research and figure out for yourself how to activate this. He's got a short article and he's got a long article. It's best to look at both, not one. It takes a bit of energy to get your head around this, but it's wonderful stuff. So that's the first body here. Then we'll go on to the cube. Now the cube, I don't think much of it, but I want to show you. All right, let me just, okay, so you got the six-sided body. Then you've got the pyramid with its reflection on the bottom, or its opposite, which is called, this is called the octahedron. These are different dimensions or different levels that we actually want to activate within our bodies, and it comes through consciousness, the raised consciousness. So let's not get too caught up in so many sides, so many sides, so many sides, you know. Let's just call them different figures that relate to different chakras or different parts of the body, different levels of consciousness. Raising your consciousness, moving from this one, the tetrahedron, right through to the icosahedron. So this will, I don't want to get into heavy stuff, but just basics so that you can understand that, yeah, mathematics and geometry starts tying up simple things for us that we don't realize is relevant to raising your consciousness. In the cube, I want to move into, okay, let's go here. I want to show you. So you've got these, and then these things elevate till we've got science or maths describing for us this fantastic thing of how now dimensions are interacting, and we're getting all weird and a bit screwy here. There it is with a round format. There you can see now something forming inside, but then we get to this image. This is, as you can imagine, there's a cube on the outside with another cube inside. Have a look at this picture. There's this so-called dimension that science or maths likes to talk about, and a new dimension comes within. This, after you've reached into these higher dimensions and you go within, there is the external or material cube of your body, and you start to go within. This is raised consciousness, not into the external world, but within. You will now start looking at this item. They call it the hypercube. It's also known as a tesseract. Now, yeah, if you can see this one. Okay, yeah, you can see is another 3D image again, a cube on the outside with that other dimension inside. So another cube within a cube. What science doesn't tell us about these things is this has got two directions in which this thing operates. You've got the one direction where raised consciousness will take you within. Once you go within to another dimension or another world, square or cube represents physical matter, basically. So once you learn, you can go within and you start arriving at another place. That's the one direction, from the outside moving in. What they don't tell you is once you're in and you've traveled off, or you've gone and got information somewhere else, you will actually come back to that point and travel in reverse. So you'll travel from inside coming back into this physical world. So this tesseract, as I say, has two directions in which it travels. Let's call it very basically at a level of words so that people can comprehend. This cube is what they call the three-dimensional world. Then when you get into the inner cube, that is where you're going within to raise your consciousness and activate or access other dimensions. So you're going within. That's called the fourth dimension. You go in, and wherever you want to go, different people are going to go different places. You're going to see different things. Not everybody's going to see the different things. You've got hundreds of different universes, parallel worlds you can go into. Once you get in there, remember with Gungnir or Odin's spear, whoever throws it, it will return. This is what this is now telling you. So we're tying in Odin's spear or that wormhole, that Stargate, we're tying it in with maths or geometry here. So you're going to go in from the third physical dimensional world into this fourth dimension, go off, come back. The dimensions now reverse. From that inner world coming back into this world, that is the 5th dimension. So you'll go inwards, that's the 4th dimension. When you reverse that process, that's the 5th dimension, what they call explosion. So when you've got implosion going from the external physical world into the inner world, that's the 4th dimension. When you're moving, gone elsewhere, come back. When you move from that dimension back into this 3rd world, it's the 4th dimension in reverse, which is the 5th dimension. Interestingly enough, let's have a look at this. We're going to go back to these Platonic bodies. These are called Platonic solids. We passed the Merkaba or the tetrahedron. Merkaba, let's see. So their basic principle, person sitting inside, one tetrahedron facing up, one tetrahedron facing down. They interlaced into each other. That's the tetrahedron, or the first of those 5 Platonic solids. Interesting enough, for the people who don't understand Ezekiel in the Bible, is this circle within a circle, is this tetrahedron, star tetrahedron, where they're spinning to generate this image. So a wheel within a wheel, they're turning in opposite directions, you're getting a different thing. There you see Ezekiel's vision. You can tie this Ezekiel's vision up with this Merkaba. It's the same thing. Let's go on a bit. We're going to go to, so we're now moving from the tetrahedron, we're moving into the cube, which is the 2nd Platonic solid. Now, I want you to have a careful look at this image and this next one. Can you see that you've basically got a square or a cube where they show the Earth on the one side, another dimension or another world or another galaxy, another universe, whatever you want to call it, on the other side, and then this Earth is going to pass through. Yeah, mathematics is explaining it, but it doesn't quite give us the secrets. We're moving from one dimension into another dimension. These are these wormholes that we're talking about. This is under the title of Einstein Bridge Rosen. You get the Einstein Rosen bridge. These are interdimensional travel. Okay, we can move then on to the, let's have a look here. Okay, so that's the cube. Then we're going to move into the 8-sided figure. Now, the 8-sided figure, we've got a normal pyramid of Giza. Doesn't matter which one you look at it. That's the average. 4 sides on the top, one last side on the bottom to give you 5 sides. However, if you put the 2 of them together, your bases disappear and you've got 4 sides on top, 4 sides on the bottom. That's your octahedron. Octa as in octopus, 8. Have a look at these 8-sided images. What are they telling us? And again, in some of the videos we discussed on Agartha, we saw that the pyramid of Giza has its opposite, or its node. It's on that node, has its opposite down below. Yeah, you can start seeing how many images around the world are showing these 2 pyramids, a mirror image if you want to call it, octahedron, whatever you want to call it. This is a nice picture, yeah. Convenient, just showing with water. I mean, okay, let's go on from there. All right, let's go into this. So let's have a look at this tetrahedron here. Here is now, this is from this website. If you'll go here, the Merkaba, Platonic solids and sacred geometry. Now we're getting heavy maths and heavy science. It doesn't matter. All 5 of these Platonic solids, when we combine them into one, we end up what we call Metatron's cube. That's all 5 in one. So here they are, the tetrahedron, the hexahedron or cube, the octahedron, dodecahedron, icosahedron. Sounds fancy, don't worry about their names. But let's have a look here. They have affiliated the tetrahedron with fire, the hexahedron or cube with earth, the octahedron with air, this 12-sided figure with water, and this 20-sided figure with ether. There are different ways you can combine this. It's relative to each one's interpretation. You can do your own research, your own homework on it, but let me explain certain basics here. When we have a look, how do they tie fire with this guy and earth with this chap and air with this body and then water and so forth? How do they do this? You have to bring in astrology. So you can see now that these items that you're seeing here, how science and astrology now starts tying in. So, I mean, who's giving these ideas that this is fire, earth, air? And that's how you can end up with two different systems. So you've got your astrology now tying in with maths. We've tied in Odin. We've tied in Greek mythology. We've tied in Tibetan mythology. We're bringing in different things. Let's have a look. These different sciences combined are how you're going to start learning to generate your own stargates. When we're talking of energy, the material world, that's where you're going to understand the Merkaba. So it's interesting to now start realizing what levels you're dealing with. The Merkaba you're going to visualize around you. It's not going to be a physical thing you're going to make. It takes a while to get that whole thing set up, because you've got to do it with breaths, you've got to do it with certain postures, you've got to do it with certain what they call mudras or positions on the hands. They give you different things. It's going to do with breathing as well. So that Merkaba is set up, that light spirit body is set up through a visualization process. Drunvala Melchizedek, go and have a look. He is the one that's explained all this. He will take you through that. Then you move into the cube where you start understanding we're traveling from one physical world into another physical world, interdimensional travel. Then you're going to go to, you've got the octahedron, which is then you're going to start realizing this is where you start looking at stargates. But when we tie up Odin with his spear, which has electricity around it, but that spear was made by the dwarf suns. That spear was made of Uru, which is sunlight. Then you start questioning to yourself, what is sunlight? And nobody wants to actually tell us what the sun, this thing that we see in the sky, what it actually is. If it's energy, you just got to start thinking logically. And again, this is where I want people to start using their own realization, their own thinking. If the sun represents energy, the moon, let's look at plants. The moon represents growth. So the moon pushes things up. It pushes up sap. It induces growth. The sun induces energy for growth. So the sun would be masculine, the moon would be feminine. Together they come together, they produce life. So when we look at sun being energy, how many times have we heard, and if you look at that Odin spear with that wormhole where it's energy, the pieces should start coming together, that you realize that energy and crystals are now tying up with each other. So when we look at the sun, nobody's telling us the sun is energy. The ancients have called it energy. We know crystals give energy, crystals give light, or crystals hold light. Crystals can form holograms. Now you start asking yourself, what is this pyramid of Giza, this pyramid in Giza? What is this? And it's shaped like the top of a, it's not, or not all crystals have got four sides to them, but the pieces should start coming together now. So you're going to use these different levels. So you're going to do the Merkaba. And the Merkaba, you're going to use sound as well. You're going to use visualization. The physical or the cube, you're going to realize you're going to have to learn basic science or basic understanding of how to set this thing up, material resources. You're then going to move into the octahedron, which you're going to understand. You're going to work with crystals, which is why you'll see all these let's call it rituals, or these magic things that we do with a circle, and people like to put in the five-sided star and whatever have you. Well, it's ironic that that five-pointed star ties up with the five-sided pyramid. Yeah. So you're going to realize you need crystals around you to set up certain energies. But this, I want people to develop their own journey. Yes, crystals, different crystals have got different functions. Quartz, well, obviously quartz is the most important thing. That's where when you start understanding Odin's spear or a wormhole, you will realize that they all use what they call quartzite. Now, quartzite encompasses even silica, which is sand. Quartzite, any of your quartz crystals, I don't want to get too technical at the moment, just to keep it on basic levels. But your quartz crystals, doesn't matter which one, doesn't matter which color, they're going to do different things. They're going to resonate with you. So now you start realizing that not everybody can use the same crystal. What's going to work for one is not going to work for another person because we have different birth signs. But more than birth signs, you need your time of birth. Your time of birth is actually going to give you your true astrology chart, not your sun sign. From your sun sign, you cannot draw an astrology chart. You need to have these with timing. You need astrology chart done according to time, your time of birth. So time of birth becomes very important.
Argon energy, I know they do the argon crystals.
Yes.
It's about just mixing crystals, different metals, man-made materials. How does that work then?
What happens? You're gonna set it all in resin. There's different. You can make these orgone. They're called orgone blasters. The point of orgone is to keep away these terrible entities. So very basically, it's a protective item you're going to build. You're going to make for yourself. Okay, you have your copper or your various metal flakes, aluminium flakes, combined with crystal, little bits of crystals, quartz crystal that you put inside. You need that coil, and when the resin is put together, it starts putting pressure under those crystals, and a crystal that gets pressurized starts generating energy. So this is how I can't think of how they've discovered how to get energy out of crystals, and it's simply because I can't think of there's a special science that they've got where they put these crystals under pressure and they start generating free energy.
No way.
So there is a special name, I can't think of it. I'm sure we've got some brilliant guys on your site who will actually be able to tell us what that is. I can't think what it is. You get metals that they bend, and through the metal that bends and that friction or that energy it produces, that's also free energy.
Right.
Tinanol is another form of metal that you get free energy from. Shungite is basically the highest carbon content mineral or item that we can find on the planet, and that's why it's so healing, so alkalizing on the body. Shungite, the bottom line with shungite, or the bottom line with these alkalizing or these healing stones, is their carbon content. So shungite has got a particularly high carbon content. When you start going within, you'll go to certain places where you've got teachers on other dimensions, in other worlds, that will actually tell you what these stones are used for. Because if the books get burnt, I mean, think about it. When they burnt all the hundreds and thousands of books and information, the so-called dark ages where we lost information, how are we getting it back, Andrew? Who's giving us that information back? If they burnt it all, how many hundreds of years ago, how are we getting that information back? And it's through these methods. So that's why I say don't relate or don't use all this reference material on Earth as your primary source. Use it as a secondary backup source if you want. The place to go is go within and ask these people. Ancient Roman times, when people died, they had what they called the boatman or the ferryman who took the dead across the waters. They used to put him in a boat, put 2 pennies on his eyes. We saw that in, I can't think what movie that was. They put pennies.
Yeah.
So you'll put pennies, that's to pay the ferryman. And then this ferryman, he wasn't on there because he was obviously in another world, but they would send that boat down the river. And this guy would be taken into another world. They'd sometimes burn the boat. And then this guy would be transported into another world and he'd go through. The boatman is very important. You don't, especially if you're new, you don't want to do this on your own. You need a guide, you need a boatman, you need a ferryman who's going to take you, because he or she knows the way. We don't know the way. We haven't traveled there. We need some guide. So yes, if you're worried about getting lost, particularly if it's new and you're in the beginning, Learn to develop a relationship with a guide and ask them. They will take you. Maybe not that person. When I spoke with my one guy, I asked him about these crystals. He said to me, go to somebody else, and he told me how to get there. With the result is, don't expect that that guide is going to take you. Sometimes they will refer you to the appropriate department. That's where that movie, John Travolta acted in that movie, Michael. Do you remember that, where he supposedly had wings?
Yeah.
And that guy and girl kept asking him to do things. He kept saying, that's not my department. That's not my department. There's all different, in my house are many mansions. There's different departments for different beings and different levels of consciousness. You're going to need to request your guide to come forward. Either speak to the person you got there, visualize it. Sometimes you'll only hear things. Sometimes you'll see things. Different people see into these other dimensions, or hear into these other dimensions, or feel into these other dimensions. Don't expect to do it the same as the next person. Crystals work. You can see things, and you will go into another dimension, and you will realize that you're not on Earth, because clearly we know what's on Earth. But when you go into another place, you will see things that you don't know what they are. We don't know what they are. There's different places. I have been into universes where I will be traveling. So I'm at times in space traveling. And we know what space looks like from the movies. When you don't recognize anything around you, you've got to know you're in another place. And it's not so scary, because these guides are not going to take you to nasty places. Dreaming is another way of accessing those worlds. Dreaming is affiliated with it, yes. But the problem with dreaming is we don't recall our dreams. So what the result is, we go to these other worlds, go and get valuable information, but we can't retrieve it because we can't remember it. So you really want to train yourself to remember your dreams. If you can't do that, then learn to sit and meditate. Dreams have got many functions, more than just traveling out there. Sometimes we need to get rid of things out of our system. We are traumatized. So dreams on one level is therapy. It's getting rid of trauma within. Dreams can also be recollections from your previous lives, previous places, however you want to go. If we are the soul, people generally get a bit icky about previous lives. But think about it. If the soul is eternal, before you got into this body, before your soul got into this body, where was it? So therefore you have a history. So you've got to try and start learning to identify, this was a weird dream. Where did it come from? I don't recognize the place. That's a good place to start. Ask that question, where was that? That's already an indication you've been somewhere else. So dreams are important.
Can I show you this picture of the peso, the Argentinian peso?
Let's have a look.
Yeah, so this is the Argentinian peso, and I've read somewhere that it depicts Hollow Earth. As you can see, the sun's in the middle, as depicting the inner Earth, and then you have the flora around the outside, and a distinctive different colour representing the crust.
Yes. When you have a look at the inner sun, as it says, Orgone has its own inner sun, which is what this is showing, the sun in the center. So you can have a look at that. Now the wreath of leaves on the outside. Now you'll see there's the UN. Now the UN, you've looked at the United Nations flag, and again you've got that wreath on the outside, which some of these conspiracy theorists claim is Antarctica on the outside, the wall, the Antarctic wall on the outside. So again, there you can see there's your Antarctic wall. And then you've got your inner sun, or the Orgone sun. I'm not going to go too much into it at the moment, but you've got different types of striations coming from the sun, different meanings again. But yes, this is one of the things that would also indirectly be showing you Orgone, or the inner sun. We've got hieroglyphics that come from Egypt that they have actually found in places in South America. How's that possible? How did those people have the same hieroglyphics in there and the same coin where we're having some of these hieroglyphics come from South America. So you've got to start realizing South America is also affiliated with the pyramid in Egypt, or the pyramid in Giza.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's also going to show you inner sun. Yes.
I'll show you the next one, the Mayan calendar. So people say that this depicts the Earth again in the center.
Have a look here. You can see this white ring that runs around here, sort of halfway through or a third from the way outside to the inside. You've got to realize that, again, they were very much into astrology. You can see basically you've got 3 layers on the outside here. This white ring is, let's just call that that's a watershed mark. But look at these 3 different layers. We've got 3 different layers. They depict outside of Argatha. Then we move into Argatha, which is beyond this ice wall. Okay, then we move into Argatha. But as you say, look at these dragons or these lizards or these serpents. But notice there's 2. The fact that you've got 2 shows the beginning of a wormhole, the end of a wormhole. That's why the snake is very, although it's mysterious, you need to understand the snake, or that Odin's spear says the swaying one, which a snake, if you want to call it, is a swaying one. It's not straight. So again, you can have a look. You've got these 2 wormholes. That's showing you've got 2 different points. Let me explain, relating to this, the Twin Towers. People don't always realize the Twin Towers. Why have you always got 2 towers in a lot of your mystical sciences, your mystery schools? You've got your 2 towers, your Twin Towers. The 2 keeps coming up. Those pillars, what are they? You need to realize that in electricity, because we're talking of this when we talk of the sun. I mean, Odin's spear was made of the suns, of energy. Now, when you look at this, you've got 2 poles in electricity, an anode and a cathode. And between them, you need 2 of them to cause an arc. That arc is what we call a wormhole. Same as when you see electricity, it's from a certain point down. Something's happening. Don't question, don't just think lightning is just lightning. No, things are happening. One of them is going to be an anode, one is going to be a cathode. The point is, one is the gate opening on this side and the gate opening on the other side.
So can they also travel to these, like on Earth, to different places very quickly? And yes, also to wherever they are in space?
Yes, that's the whole point. It's a shortcut. It's a short circuit to the other point. Well, the lightning is the wormhole. Remember when we looked at Zeus holding that lightning bolt? Yeah. That lightning bolt is the wormhole.
So when we see lightning in the sky, do you think that could be someone traveling?
Well, this is, now you see, Andrew, that's the type of thinking that you want to get into. We have never questioned. We look at the stars and we say, wow, fabulous. Who's questioned what electricity is? Look, when we think of electricity, you don't want to think of electricity in the house. You want to take it deeper than that. You want to look at EMF, electromagnetic fields or currents. EMF. That's the electricity you're talking about. That energy runs in 2 directions. It runs through the wormhole, but there's also a current running from the side. When you look at free energy, you will notice that free energy doesn't just run in one direction. It runs at 90 degrees. Sometimes it runs at an angle. When you start looking into energy and you start realizing that you're talking with different planes, what is this? I mean, we're talking about from different places. Isn't another place another dimension? So when you got these arcs, now I want to try and settle a lot of people's minds about these twin towers that were blown up and taken out in America. Those 2 represented an anode and a cathode, or a wormhole to another place. You'll notice in the movie Stargate, we had a Stargate here and something else on the other side opened up. They blew those 2 towers because they were shutting down the Stargate of that particular planet, that particular constellation, that particular place. They wanted to shut down that Stargate. You have to ask yourself, who did they want to stop communicating with? And we take it personal, that we think it's a human thing, that we think it's something against us humans, that they shut that Stargate down. There, it's showing you clearly there's an arc there to open up the Stargate or the portal this side. They shut it down. And we've taken it personal, saying it's something to do with us. We don't actually know who they're in contact with, because that's top secret.
So
who are they?
Are the elite now destroying all the monuments, so they've got the control of communicating and teleporting now? Are they using ISIS to destroy the Middle Eastern places?
These subterfuges or these red herrings that they're putting out, yes, you can have a look at them, but we've got to start looking at behind what's actually going on there. We've got to actually have a look at what's behind this. Remember, those are distractions. Yes, it's important, politics and these political games and these political power shifts and all this. Yes, pay attention to that, but don't focus on that. Realize that at the back of that, I mean, they blew up one of these pyramids, an ancient pyramid in, was it Angola? I mean, what are they doing? Yeah. Blowing up these openings, these portals. But remember, the portal's underneath. So that's where you start looking at the Platonic solids. That octagon, that octahedron, the pyramid on the top and the pyramid on the bottom, while they've blown the one on the top, the one on the bottom still exists. So what the result is, that link or that opening is still there. They just stopped people going there. So we are confused and we say, it's gone. We got no more access. No. Stonehenge has lost some of its stones, but we have got things. You can rebuild Stonehenge temporarily on particular dates. The Mayan calendar worked with dates, very much into astrology or watching the stars. So those alignments were very important. Alignments for what? We never question. We always poo-poo astrology. What are we aligning, Andrew? Why are alignments the word we don't pay attention? The sun and the moon has aligned with another planet. Is alignment not a direct path? A wormhole? Is that not another form of alignment?
Yeah. Is this so all their pyramids line up in a row and they can travel to somewhere? Right. Because maybe like they only have certain range on them, so maybe there's only certain times a year they can travel to somewhere.
Yeah, think about the speed of an arc. How fast does electricity arc?
Yeah.
That's the speed at which you travel from one place to another. These are what they call the Einstein-Rosen bridge, the so-called interdimensional travel. And there they show Earth being swallowed in a black hole. Oh, these black holes are very scary. Yeah. Don't go through a black hole. Yeah. That's control. But remember, these guys who are in control of this have got these stargates open permanently. We're just not allowed there. That's why these so-called national monuments are protected. You can't just walk there, because they don't want people going through there. Castles, why are castles? Let me not go into that one. Let's have a look. So these wormholes will take you from one place to another place in the universe. Yeah, no, there's thousands. There's thousands.
Ley lines?
Yes, they use ley lines. The nodes where they cross. Those, and that's where, if you go and have a look at the United Nations flag, have a careful look at that grid and then look at where that grid crosses, where those lines cross. You've got stargates there. Yes, this is where religion has been taken and made into a, I'm trying to think of an appropriate word here. It's got only one way, what they call the narrow path, and you only want to stick with that. Again, the word narrow path already should start highlighting, bells should be going off in your head when you start thinking. But there are places within the buildings that have the wormholes. Sometimes you'll have an archway. What's that story of Narnia? Where those kids go through that wardrobe?
Yeah.
Well, that's a squared opening. You've got other people who will put rings on the ground. You've got Stargate, the movie, who'll put a ring upright in a vertical position. You've got other people who will access it from caves. You've got different places. So you have to study the building to understand where is this wormhole or this node or this opening. But remember, those structures that they are using, that they are currently having open. Remember yesterday's talk, I said to you, there are invisible Stargates and there are physical Stargates. What we're wanting to build are the invisible ones. They've already plugged all these physical Stargates. That's why in the middle of nowhere, there's a military base camp. Andrew, I mean, a military base camp is heavily armed, heavily protected with guns and stuff. What are they protecting out in the middle of nowhere?
Yeah, exactly.
So you've got to start asking yourself, what's going on? I mean, protecting it from who? I mean, in Antarctica, they've got a military base. What are they protecting?
Exactly. Yeah.
So you start asking these questions about all these places. So the Stargates that we can build, and this is where you're not just going to go there, get given the recipe to build a Stargate and it's going to happen. You have to raise your consciousness. Because, Andrew, if we are going to go with our polluted brains, our level of consciousness, with our egos, with our I want and the me and the I, and we go off to these other places, Andrew, they're not going to accept us there. Look, there's certainly the dark side and there's the light side, but think logically. This is why we have to do our homework and why we have to start thinking and we have to start getting the ideas of what's going on there. If we're going to go to a certain place, why would we go there? We need to go there for a purpose. You're not going to go there for a trip. You're not going to go there for a holiday. That's another thing. These psychedelics that people that are made illegal. We go on what they call a trip.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a trip has got a lot of meaning, and a trip is also what happens when electricity shorts. We are meant to stay here until we've raised our consciousness enough to go off and go and visit. And if your consciousness is raised to enough of a degree, you will be allowed to stay.